college admissions officers of Reddit. What is the most ridiculous thing a student has put on their application? Attention. Please keep Ask Reddit's Rule 4 in mind and do not post any personal information, even if it's obviously fake. This includes, but is not limited to, phone numbers, email addresses, full names, screen names, social security numbers, or anything else that can be used to identify or contact an individual. We do not allow any type of personal information, even if it's supposed to be fake, or if it's your own. Violations of this rule will result in comment removal and a ban. See rule #4 link. Reddit. com/r/askreddit/wiki/index/wiki_rule 4 for more details. Thanks. I'm a bot. Please contact the moderators at /r/askreddit/message/compose/to=r/r/askreddit if you have any questions or concerns. The amount of students who glue rice to their applications to Rice University is too damn high. Now if they used glued rice to form all the letters of their essay, then I'd be impressed. My favorite email I ever received was a reply to an admission where all the kid said was "AIIII, we made it." I printed that out for my desk for sure. Remember, kids, if it doesn't say it's an automated email, don't reply like it is. I also got one for a rejection, and it said "duck your anyways." I miss that job, haha. Graduate school admissions. Our application requires 4 separate essays. This student wrote all 4 as a long, drawn-out love letter to one of our faculty members. The faculty member wasn't taking new students into the lab and had never met or talked to the prospective student. The student had taken all the info for her love letters from his website in addition to providing a list of his publications, also from his website, that she had read. I walked away from reading her application with zero sense of who she was, but having learned a lot more about the faculty member. That's something you don't read about every day. Attention to detail. Less ridiculous, but we had an applicant send in a book they wrote and published themselves. It was difficult for us to really read it, because for some reason the book really stank. We just put it in their file and shut the door. Like, stank as in literally smelled bad? Yeah, it was awful. The book itself seemed fine, but the odor made it really difficult to read. I don't know why, but this is hilarious to me. I'm a college soccer coach. I was at a college recruitment event. At these events they hand out profile booklets. In the section of interesting facts, one of the players' bios had an ad for a car that he was selling. I wish our coach would let us put interesting facts on our brochure. We had some characters on our team. Not an admissions officer, but I can answer this. My email address. Some kid in India put my email address on all of his college apps. I've gotten copies of some of his applications with everything from his photo, Aadhaar number, taxes, blood type, address, grades, to his grandparents' phone numbers on it. Basically how it works is admissions sends me his offer. I forward it to him. He calls school to change contact info. School clarifies with me. He gets to go to college. Kid's super lucky. I speak English B. Don't delete spam emails. Will have a hard time stealing a 17-year-old Indian dude's identity as a white woman in Los Angeles. My email address. I have a Yahoo email account that I have had for many years. It is my first initial, second initial, and common last name at yahoo.com. It is shocking how often others have mistyped their email address and unintentionally typed mine. I've received very important emails intended for others and have forwarded and even called some of them. I've also gone onto websites to register as a new user and found I already had an account. Clicked lost password, received a new password, logged on and found someone else's personal information, sometimes including their saved credit card information. It could be bad. Folks, double check that you have typed your email address correctly. Someone wrote a very lovely and extensive essay on how they wanted to go to Vanderbilt for an application to American in DC. My high school counselor told us about kid who did something similar. He sent his essays to the wrong schools, but when he realized what he'd done, He sent them both photos of himself with his foot in his mouth and they both accepted him. Well, that was unexpected. I know a college admissions person, and one time they told me that a student wrote down that they can distinguish bra cup sizes by a simple glance at a woman. They were not impressed. Seems like he'd be interested in studying abroad. Or 2. This is such a stupid joke, but the sheer corniness made me laugh out loud despite what an exhausting day I'm having. So thank you lol edit, especially because I automatically read it in a sceneful voice. My college proudly advertised that in my class we had an Oreo stacking champion. Never figured out who it was after 4 years. It was your professor. He secretly hopes someone finds out each year. At a law school I was considering attending. The admissions people told the story of a woman who had sent in a shoe with her application along with a note that said, "Now I have a foot in the door." Actually, not to quibble, but she had a shoe in the door. If she wanted to get her foot in the door, she needed a hacksaw. Now that would be a story worth telling. So the problem started when we noticed the parcel was leaking blood. It escalated from there. Hey, it would show commitment. Because she could apply to, at most, 2 schools, right? I once had an applicant come through who put that their preferred name was the Turtle on their college application. Well, it's your own damn fault for not having a species field. Poor Turtle had to make do with the name box. Our applicant literally wrote something along the lines of, "Please don't accept me. I don't want to go to your school," in the addendum section of our application because his parents forced him to apply. Another time an applicant submitted a essay composed of Japanese characters that, when put through Google Translate, turned out to be a loosely translated version of Cat in the Hat. There is a math and science school in my state and, according to a friend of mine, there's a part of the interview process where they offer to reject you if you don't want to go, since so many parents forced kids into applying. The service academies have the same thing. Dad's a general/admiral/senator? We don't care. If you call this number you won't be admitted and no one will ever know why. Kinda sad that this stuff exists. That they were a people person. Because they had multiple personalities. As opposed to a person people who have one personality split between them. Or person or persons who have the same number of personalities as physical bodies. Not an admissions officer, but I wrote a 750-word admissions essay describing the smell of baked potatoes. Maybe not what they had in mind, but I got accepted and went on to attend that university. The worst CV I ever saw as part of an application to a graduate program was a barely intelligible, unformatted mess that included such bits of information as she likes to spend her free time reading, and her favorite book is 50 Shades Grey. Not an admissions officer, but a couple years ago, a girl sent in an application to my university in larger than normal packaging. Someone in the admissions office decided it was suspicious looking and might be a bomb. A section of campus got shut down, and bomb squad got to use their fancy toys to figure out it was just a regular application that the girl attached lights to so her app would stand out. When I was young, my grandfather often took me hunting for peasants. He meant pheasants. To be fair, this was a Princeton application, so for all we know he might have also meant peasants. Edit. Heard this one from a rather unpleasant Princeton admissions officer. Maybe she stole the story from somewhere to scare high school seniors everywhere. Also, thanks for the gold. Sounds like someone I had class with in high school who had wealthy lawyer parents. He called everyone peasants and ended up getting arrested for posting online about his plan to shoot up our school. He escaped severe legal punishment because of said wealthy lawyer parents. When I applied to medical school, one of the application essays had a prompt that asked us what we would do if we did not get into medical school. I wrote that I would go to law school and become a lawyer specializing in prosecuting medical malpractice. I ended up getting an interview and had a good laugh about it with one of the interviewers. Did not get into that medical school. One of my high school teachers used to read a newsletter that highlighted these type of things. My favorite one was this. For one, the essays the application asked, ask yourself a question and then answer it. The student's response, do you play the tuba? No, he got accepted. Edit, spelling. Rarely comment, but I feel compelled to tell this story, even though it's slightly off topic. I intern in the admissions office at a decently prestigious private California university, and overhear the counselors making decisions. They regularly shout stats across the office to get other people's input on whether or not to accept/deny applicants. There was one kid who was right on the edge of what we normally accept, the lower end of the spectrum. My boss shouted out his stats and got mixed responses. Then she said the infamous phrase I'll never forget, "But guys, I soloed his house. It's $4 million in Los Angeles 'THEY duck I'm let him in." That was the determining factor for this kid's college career. I will never forget sitting there in horror listening to them joke about his wealth. I have so little respect for college admissions, at least at my school, and the administration after hearing that. Anyways, that's my yearly comment. Have a good night everyone. Potential donor family alert. I work with a few colleges, and they definition bend the rules for a few well-off students that they think can be an expanded source of revenue. Colleges have to fundraiser constantly, so it's good to connect a few rich families to your school so that you can hit them up for naming rights to a new lab space, auditorium, or building. Not an admissions officer, but a high school classmate of mine was being forced to apply in state by his parents. He had already been accepted out of state for EA, so naturally he took his beautifully written essays, put them through Google Translate a couple of times, then submitted the result. He got waitlisted. Edit, EA equals early admission action. He had already been accepted into his dream out of state school, and parents had agreed to pay for it. So not really being in a chat there. Also, the in-state school is quite prestigious. Think top 30. So we were all mildly shocked/amused to hear that he had gotten waitlisted. For shiggles, I put your comment into Google Translate and cycled it through German, Thai, Spanish, Chinese, and then English. There are no admission officers, but high school friends are forced to pet their parents. He was removed from the position of EA, of course. He wrote an exquisite article, translated several times through Google Translate, and then delivered it. He was on the waiting list. I put your comment through Translate and cycled it through Italian, Greek, Swedish, Portuguese, Russian, French, Arabic, Chinese, simplified, Chinese, traditional, and finally English. No reception manager, but high school friends have to worry about their parents. Dragged from the EA website, of course. He wrote an excellent article translated several times by Google Translate and then delivered. He is on the waiting list. Not an admissions officer, but had a friend who responded to the question "Tell us about yourself" by drawing himself using lines and dashes on the computer and labeling parts of his face. He was accepted. Every time this question comes up, there's always people complaining about kids who have something really petty for their hardship they overcame essay, but also they complain when kids writes those essays about how they've never really had a hardship to overcome. Yeah, that essay kinda dicks over people who've had a decent life, as well as dicking over people who've had a traumatic experience, and writing a whole thing about it would trigger PTSD, and also dicking over people who have overcome a real hardship, but want to keep their private life private. Honestly, that really shouldn't be a prompt. I went through some tough times in my childhood, but I didn't want to talk about them, so I left out all the important details that made me who I am. My essay was basically an underbaked cake with no frosting. I had some really hard times as a kid, but most of them were caused by my parents, who read my college essays before I submitted them and would have gone apeshit if I had told the truth. While something I can answer, I have a few favorites and I'm on mobile, so sorry for formatting. For their GPA they put 95. One student listed their high school as IDK, one student listed their intended major as teaching, and their minor in principal. I asked one person how to spell their name, and they had to ask their mother how to spell it. Multiple people have actually tried listing their IQ as a reason for admittance. If you get to write your own personal essay, do not write why as the title and the entire essay be why not. Maybe not too ridiculous, but they stuck with me. Edit. To clarify, the application makes it apparent for your GPA on a 4-point scale. I'm sure that last person was super smug thinking their essay was genius. So original and unheard of. My brother applied to a religious private school, and one prompt was, in what way has God encouraged you to pursue law? His answer was N/er. He got in and used the scholarship to negotiate funding at the schools he wanted to go to. I didn't even know this was possible. Maybe if you're an athlete you might be able to leverage the size of your scholarship at one school vs another, but how does that work for regular students? Who would you even tell about it? The admissions people? The financial aid office? Scholarship negotiation is common with law school scholarships, and from the question asked, it sounds like this was a law school application. You would typically contact the offer/individual that sent the letter stating the initial offer. Some schools even have forms you fill out on their website specifically for negotiating money. Definitely did this. 2 law schools in my state. Leverage generic full ride language from the worst. I mean there are only 2. School into the better, again. Best, school matching and offering a full ride. A guy with a very sketchy work history in property investment applied for a law degree. His application was based on relevant experience as he was subject of multiple and some ongoing lawsuits. It was mostly a rant about how he thought his lawyers were incompetent and he could do a much better job. He included a photo cropped out of a group shot at the bar, used many blocked quotes attributed to himself, including something along the lines of "I want to break down the barrier between success and spectacular success." Edit. Just remembered another one which included a list of key weaknesses, not key strengths. Key weaknesses included not working well with people. This was for her MBA. My sister had to write an essay for a super Christian college she was applying to, and she wrote about the struggles she faced being atheist and got accepted. That actually sounds legit. Most Christians are actually decent people who wouldn't think being an atheist disqualifies you from their school. A well-written essay on a topic like that ticks a lot of general college application boxes, dealing with hardship, diversity, etc. Closed bracket comma. And would likely be well received in most places. I had a student apply for a master's program, but the student didn't have a college degree. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.